Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris, aka Starrapter, joined by the one and only Milton Weber and real Ben Maynard here for episode number 79 of the Outer Rim Transmission, your weekly source for the latest in Star Wars news, commentary, and much, much more. We are here today, especially to talk about Andor Season 1, Episode 7, titled Announcement. That was funny how they actually had the title called announcement. I was like, are they announcing something? No, this is just part of the episode. So we're going to get into that tonight as well as some news updates as usual. But I'm going to throw it over to Ben, man. How you doing? How's it going? What's new with you with Star Wars?
Good. It's been a pretty good week for me. I would say. I was a little sick earlier in the week, but I'm feeling better now. So things are getting better. Um, but yeah, I mean, for me with Star Wars this week, it wasn't too eventful really, other than I uh, I just like I went and I was just looking around on YouTube and checking out like different creators and stuff. Just taught I went and was looking up reviews of like some of the old expanded universe books, like seeing what just random reviews like about the Thrawn trilogy, about the Republic Commando books, like, and it's cool seeing people like, because I saw people post reviews about like the Thrawn trilogy just from like over the summer they had posted the video, and it's cool just seeing people go back to that old content like that, and review it as like kind of a new review post like from 25 years ago type thing. So I just went and just was searching around stuff like that, because as we all know here, like when it comes to like fitness and stuff, you need something to like do when you're on the treadmill for like
Mm-hmm.
20-30 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for all my like cardio sessions when I was doing some cardio. I was just researching like old reviews. Like I was thinking of old titles like, oh, Death Troopers review, oh, this review, that review, and was just checking out what people had to say about the
Oh.
old Star Wars books. So it was pretty cool just checking out what people were saying. And the funny thing is, like a lot of the reviews on those old books, they're still standing strong. Like people, like almost all those reviews I was talking about, like they were getting like positive feedback on these things. Like the funny thing is, like Death Troopers, for example,
Oh, yeah.
um, you know, just like when we talked about it before a few weeks ago, the review I saw, like the person was like, "Oh yeah, this is like such a an amazing Star Wars story, blah blah blah." But man, it is like brutal and like one of the most
Mm-hmm.
brutal Star Wars stories there are. So it's cool just hearing like people still talk so like glowingly about projects that are 10, 20, 25 years old like that.
Yeah, it really comes down to it all holds up and the subject matter is so enticing. And, you could leave your thoughts at the door about, oh, is this canon or not, and just get swept away in the story because it's relevant. I mean, I still want to revisit the Thrawn trilogy that Zahn did in the 90s because, with everything going on with, where we think we're going to be with Mandalorian, we think we're making a pseudo Thrawn trilogy in live action, basically, for the most
Yep.
part. So it would be kind of cool to go back and just enjoy that because, again, that was one of the first books I read. I read that book series shortly after I read Harry Potter. So I remember reading that book and being transported back into that eye doctor's office, like reading a chapter about Luke Skywalker in like these trees or something. Like that's how much that book impacted me. Like almost like probably like 22 years later, I still remember where I was in a certain chapter. Like I could only say certain things like with the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones, Storm of Swords. I remember exactly where I was and my reaction to that moment reading that book for the first time before I even seen the show. So yeah. So yeah, I mean a lot of those books again, they just hold up. What about you, Milton? Have you delved into some of the older stuff or have you seen other people talking about some of the older stuff recently?
Not recently. I mean, and I'll answer that question in a second. But as for my week in Star Wars, I didn't really have much this week. This has been kind of like a low key week in my life when it comes to Star Wars. So really, no news to report on that front. However, to answer your question now, Chris, yeah, I think I might have mentioned it during one of my weeks in Star Wars about a month or two ago. There was a guy that I discovered who's been going back and just doing like retro like reviews
Oh.
of said the books or movies or whatnot. And it's nice to see that, you can clearly tell that the expanded universe, especially the post Return of the Jedi stuff, has been well received and still liked till this day. Obviously, this gentleman that was reviewing the Legacy of the Force trilogy, or excuse me, series, talked about. He's like, listen, this should have been what the sequel trilogy should have been with the films, because we have the characters, we have the story built in. You might have to tweak some things for the movies, but he's like, the story was already written, and I agree with him. Obviously, Ben Solo and Jason Solo have a lot of commonalities as characters, but they're very different too. So yeah, I still go back and try to check out old reviews, just because, like I said, I enjoy the audiobooks and the Legends books so much. I know there's a Legends book that I need to actually rebuy. I think you have it, Chris, which is the Darth Maul. Was it what's it called? Shadowhunter. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good.
I want to get that one because that's the one that Sam Witwer does, that he narrates. So I think that'd be a good one to do, or to add to my collection, just because I like Sam Witwer as an actor, entertainer. And he does have a voice that fits Star Wars.
It's so good. He really gets like real low in the voice and as Maul, and you almost cringe in fear when you're hearing him play the Emperor. Just the rattling voice of like, oh shoot. And by the way,
that's crazy, because like I love that he plays Palpatine, because it's funny how people think of Palpatine and an old man. They think of him as an old man playing the character, and really it's like, no. Ian McDermott was 36 years old when he first played that role in Return of the Jedi. So he wasn't old. And it's funny because Sam Witwer has told a story. He's like, anytime that I want to voice him, people say, well, you're not an old man. He's like, neither was Ian McDermott. He was 36 when he started. Same age as I was at the time when he took that character over doing the animation version. So to me, you can tell there's a difference between Ian and Sam, but they're very common too in how he just portrays those characters. So again, Sam's perfect as a voiceover actor when it comes to these books. So yeah, I can't wait to add that to my collection someday.
It really is fantastic when you see somebody that voices a character or even plays a character in live action somehow gets the chance to do something as simple as what we think is a book. It's like, man, they're taking the time out of their day to do that. I'm sure they're getting paid handsomely for it, but it's still cool to be like, hey, they're transferred between mediums. To a lot of them, I think, would do it willingly for a very low price, because they just that character is theirs. They think, well, I mean, not his particularly, but like they feel almost a sort of ownership. Like you look at what Billy D. Williams does, and that guy I don't know if anybody else ever voices Lando, even like the Lego stuff he's doing him. So it's fun.
Well, the funny thing is, go on, Milton.
Well, see, I know in the radio drama he does Empire, but he doesn't do Return of the Jedi.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was going to throw in there, speaking of the voice actors, to kind of throw in this story. I mean, it wasn't on our show notes, but I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast. So did you guys see a couple weeks ago, I think it was when he had the week off, actually, Hollywood Reporter reported James Earl Jones actually retired.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, for like our listeners, the cool thing about this story is, like, you may hear, oh, James Earl Jones retiring, that stinks. But the really good part of that article that came out of it was he signed his voice rights indefinitely for Lucasfilm to use as Darth Vader. So like they're going to keep using his his voice electronically, like they did for for the Kenobi series and like other projects. So now we're basically going to get James Earl Jones' likeness for Darth Vader just from here on out, which is great in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's cool that, they had enough foresight into the future with that, because, stuff with Tarkin, obviously they didn't sign any paperwork or anything. That was like way in the future, and like I guess they had to get the rights by the estate of Peter Cushing's family and all. So it's neat to see, like, hey, he acknowledges, like, hey, go ahead, use my likeness or whatever, use my voice, it's fine. The one thing I'll say is, like, hey, Vader's voice is synthesized anyway, so like people having a problem with that, it's like, look, his voice is mechanical. Like, even if it sounds that way in recordings, and it doesn't, because it sounded amazing in Obi-Wan. I loved it in Obi-Wan more than I liked his own voice in Rogue One. He's got older, way older. You could tell. So yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, Milton,
You guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's James Earl Jones, man. It's what else can I say? It's a character that's beloved by everyone that likes Star Wars. He has a very iconic voice, no matter it's Darth Vader or Mufasa or whomever, So I'm glad that he's cool with doing that. I'm not surprised. But like I said, now that his voice will always be, I guess it will be immortal in a lot of ways, just because we'll be able to use it from the end of time. So that's what's up.
Yeah. By the way, Milton, I seen on Facebook, you did a little bit of Jedi training on Asian class or a similar location earlier on in the week with your work. It looked like. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, that was today. So today we had a staff retreat. We went to this like this campground where we work with this company. They have like a high ropes course. They have like a climbing thing and like a giant
Nice.
swing. It's a
Oh,
wilderness camp where we went. Um, anyways, we were able to do this training, but also at the same time they allowed us to do their ropes course, which was pretty dope. So it was climbing, zip lining, walking on like planks. Like, it was high. Like everyone was latched in individually. It was pretty dope. Like I enjoyed it. I did it. Yeah, it was pretty badass. You can't be scared, man. You got to just lock in and just do it. So
oh yeah, I'm looking at the video that you have. Whoa, that is freaking high. Like I love stuff like this.
yeah.
God,
But
I'm
I
I'm
know I,
scared of
I know
heights too.
I know someone got a video of me zip lining down and doing the big swing. So that was pretty cool. I don't have those videos yet, but it was pretty dope. Like I didn't think I would enjoy myself because I'm not really an outdoors person when it comes to like wilderness, but doing this type of thing, like I enjoy like climbing and active like that. So that actually kind of like made it really good for me today.
Damn. Yeah, it's just great to be out there in the fresh air and, experiencing just nature and everything, but also, trying something new and it feels good. And I used to love that stuff. Nearby park had zip lines stuff as a kid, and back then in the 90s, it was like, yeah,
Right.
you have a 10-foot drop, don't worry about it. It's like
Yeah, and,
it
and that's
just
what it was. Like I know because I was the first one to go to do it today, like out of our group. So like I mean, just it was cool. And we talked about how it ties into Star Wars a little bit, maybe. Like yeah, it's a lot of like strength, physical strength, mental strength. Being like just locked in and focused. Being mindful of where you're stepping. That type of stuff. So it was cool, man. Like I mean, it'd be something that I guess Luke would have used on Dagobah to train.
exactly. So I had to get that in there because I seen that right before we recorded. So look at that. You had something to say and you didn't even know about it.
Yeah. Honestly, in the moment, I wasn't thinking about Star Wars. I was thinking about Milton. Make sure you don't fall. Make sure you have your grip. You got to focus, man. Like but it was fun. I mean, it was definitely something I would do again. I would definitely do the climbing course whenever that's open next time we go.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I always wanted to do something like Ninja Warrior or something like that because I love climbing and jumping and leaping and all those sorts of things. So one of these days, we'll open up the Luke Skywalker Training Academy or something. I don't know.
There
Um,
we go.
I, I, I have, as I referenced earlier, Ben, I have something for all of us to look at. I'll do my best to explain what it looks like because I know not every one of us that watches so can listen to us on any podcast platform of their choice. And we'll go over that in a second. But first, I got to show off a cool action figure. So this is from the Mandalorian Black Series line. I got myself a Dark Trooper, and it's the deluxe version, so it's a little bit bigger of a box. I stopped at my local Target, and funny enough, this was the same one I was eyeing at Comic Con, and I was like, I can get a better price. I was like, I'm not paying 35 for this at Comic Con. I can get a better price, which is funny because usually at Comic Con is where you're gonna get the cheaper stuff anyway. But I just was looking for a bargain, as I often do now, and I saved a big $2, a big $2 I saved up from buying at the Target instead of at the stand there at the Midtown Comics booth and Comic-Con. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, technically, I think he's like the first like Legends character that's now canon to be in Black Series form. I try to justify like, oh, I'm buying this for a very specific reason. Like Cobb Vanth was like, I had to buy him because he was the first novel character to be in a Black Series figure form and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, I always like the look of Dark Troopers. I don't know where I'm going to display them. I still gotta keep telling myself I gotta like buy another storage bin, put my stuff that's on display in that storage bin, and then put all the new stuff out. But that just requires a lot of effort, and you know, it does look nice in a box. And apparently they're redoing the Hasbro packaging. They're trying to be, you know, eco-friendly now. And they're not going to have a plastic window. It's going to be really weird. Walk into a store and just seeing a box and you don't know what's inside the box, you know. Because sometimes, like Hasbro's done a really good job lately with like faces. They have like the realistic like face paint, whatever thing they call now, the application. But every once in a while you'll get like a dud. You know, and at least you could tell from the plastic window, like, that figure sucks. What about the one behind it? Oh, yeah, one looks a little bit better. So for quality control wise, it's going to kind of suck having to go for like a mystery box sort of thing. And there will be no reason to keep things in boxes anymore. Right? I'll just open them all up, I guess, at this point, because who cares about the outside of what a box looks like? But anyway, so yeah. It does kind of grind my gears a little bit that Hasbro is putting out so many of these deluxe figures where it's like, oh, they include like 2 accessories and they jump the price by about $10 and they make the bigger box because of it. It's like, really? Like you did that with Cobb Vanth, and I could do it with the Dark Trooper. It's like, where can I buy the figures that used to be $18, you know? So that's me ranting on about Hasbro, as often happens, and Gonzo probably agrees with me, which is why he's gone down to the vintage collection. I don't know if he's listening tonight, but
oh yeah, I mean, you know how it is with like companies, like it's like scaling things back and scaling them down, and yeah, I mean, like you said, I feel like part of the fun of like looking at some of those things is just like actually seeing them versus just like a picture on the box, you know. And then of course, like you said, just seeing like the quality of the figures and whatnot. I mean, heck, some of them, it's just funny to see. You know, a lot of times the figures look really similar, but other times, like, you know, there's been some bad face scans in the past for some figures where
Poe
they don't look good. Yeah, Poe. I remember Ewan even pointed out his Kenobi figure didn't look like himself.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, you have different things like that. It's just funny to see, and then it's like now it's like, man, you can't even actually see the figure before you purchase it.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, so at least the vintage, which are the 3.75-inch figures, are still going to be, because that's their whole appeal, is those vintage figures that you have them on the nice card back. Like, I don't think most people open those up because they just look like really cool from a direct collector standpoint. Whereas I think most of the kids like to play with the bigger Black Series figures and take them out of the box. But yeah, we have it off the top from Aaron Daly, a loyal listener and viewer of the channel. What are your guys' thoughts on Harrison Ford joining the MCU? So that's damn near confirmed. I think Variety put that report out. But yeah, guys, I was flipping out. I messaged you about it, I think, in the chat. I was like, oh my God, did you guys see Harrison Ford is joining the MCU? Like, this is insane. He's playing Thunderbolt Ross, apparently, because that actor, I forget his name, passed away. I think there's some people that have a morbid opinion on this thing already. They're like, why are you going to hire Ford? He's only going to live for another 5 years. Which is sad to say. Like, don't think about it that way. I know he's 80, he's up in his age, but try not to think like that, people. He's going to be with us until he's 110 years old, I'm telling you. But what are your thoughts on, I know this is technically Star Wars in a way. We're going to see Han Solo in the MCU. What are your thoughts? I'll throw it to you, Milton.
I mean, it is what it is. First of all, I never really cared about the Thunderbolt Ross character, I'll be honest with you. I mean, he played a purpose in the movies. Like, he definitely helped push the narrative, whether it's with Hulk, Captain America, and then obviously Black Widow. I mean, as long as Harrison Ford can come in and, you know, I can believe that that's Thunderbolt Ross, fine. I got no issues with the recast. guess my only problem would be, and this comes back to another actor that left us is T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman. Why couldn't we recast him?
Yeah.
If it served the best purpose for the story. Now, again, that's another podcast for another day. It is what it is. It's just, to me, it's goofy. It's weird. It's very hypocritical, I think, on Disney's part or Marvel.
Yeah.
They've come out and said to be respectful if we didn't recast. It's like, I disagree. But hey, it is what it is. If it serves their story, great. It is what it is. I love Harrison Ford as an actor. I'm sure he'll kill it.
Mm-hmm. What happens if their plan all along was to kill off T'Challa in the second movie? Wouldn't that be crazy?
If that's the case, then fine. But I don't believe it, just because that's them backtracking. Because you're not going to convince me that you're going to kill off a heavy hitter in the MCU. To me, before he passed, I was thinking that he was going to be the next, not Tony Stark, but he's going to be that Tony Stark-ish of the finances
Captain America. Okay.
The leadership. Because to me, Black Panther is an alpha. He's not a B type. He don't step to nobody. Hell, he was going to wreck Captain America and Bucky. I mean, and he probably could have wrecked Iron Man if he wanted to. So I don't see him at the time before he passed, God rest his soul. I don't see Chadwick Boseman's characters being taking a step back. Anybody. He's like, okay, I'm the guy. Because hell, they kind of proved that the end of Civil War, whenever Cap goes to him and says, hey, can you take care of my boy? He's like, all right, I got you. He's like, but they're going to be coming looking for you here. You know what I'm saying? So he's like, oh, no, we'll be ready. So Black Panther to me was like, all right, we'll take on anybody. We ain't scared of nobody. And Wakanda is the greatest nation in the country or in the world. They've clearly shown that. So to me, I would have thought that they would have made him kind of like one of the co-leaders the Avengers moving forward if he would have stayed alive.
Well, Milton, I'll get to the Harrison Ford thing in a second, but I completely agree with everything you just said. For me, especially after Tony Stark died, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, but especially after he died, I was fully on board. Black Panther was my new favorite character moving ahead in Marvel, because it's his character, like you said, he's badass, he's smart, he's all those things, and to me, I would have just loved to see him recasted because he was an awesome character. I think Chadwick Boseman, Boseman of course did a great job playing him, but he made the character so believable. You believe, you believe that was Black Panther. Because for example, sometimes you see a Dwayne Johnson movie and you think just The Rock versus I feel like with Black Panther, you just saw him versus just Chadwick Boseman. He killed it. But yeah, I agree with you on that. I wish they would have looked into that more. And then as for the Harrison Ford stuff, yeah, I mean, he's believable, good. Yeah, it's I don't think as well that he's going to be a continuing role, if you know what I mean. He's not going to be. We're not going to see him in 7 movies. I bet you max maybe 2 movies at the very max, but I would say maybe just 1 movie. But yeah, I think it'll be exciting seeing him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I forget who this character even is. I watch every MCU thing that comes out, and
here's the thing. He's what's his name's dad. He's Betty Ross's pop.
Well, okay. I have to see. I have watched that movie one time about 10 years ago. I barely don't remember that.
Yeah, he was chasing down Hulk, because old boy was dating a girl, and then he comes back in Civil War as now Secretary of the State.
Is that the guy that's pushing for the contract for people to sign?
Yes.
Oh, it's that guy.
Yep. And then he was chasing Black Widow.
In what movie was he chasing? Movie. He was?
Black Widow.
Yeah, because remember, in the first 5 to 10 minutes, it picks up right after at the end of Civil War where she's on the run.
Oh yeah.
And they find her in some building, and they're doing the intercom. He's like, Romanoff, we found you, blah blah blah. She's you didn't, I'm gonna wreck you. And that's when he comes in because he had another heart attack. She says oh, you look like shit, pretty much. So he has another heart attack. He's like, whatever. I mean, yeah, he's in that movie for 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. But I mean, not knowing much about that character, but knowing the role he would kind of inhabit is just like this old gruff war guy. Like that's such a Harrison Ford like type right there. Like that I could see him fitting so well into that like gruff, rough and tough guy. It's gonna eventually turn into Red Hulk, right? He turns into Red Hulk.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really know that.
I believe I've seen he turns into Red Hulk. I've seen images of people like photoshopping like what he would look like as Red Hulk. And it makes perfect sense because he doesn't have to do any physical acting or physical acting at least because he just gets CGI'd anyway. So it works out. It's not like he's playing a secret agent. He's got to move around and all this stuff. He just hulks out and that's it. So I think it could work, but we'll see how long. We'll see how long it goes because he's like 80 years old now. So we're working with the clock here a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I think it is time to get into our business here on the show. Our housekeeping. I don't know why I said business. For those of you that are listening, it's late, everybody. For those of you that are listening, you can watch us live on YouTube every Friday night at 9 o'clock Eastern on the channel youtube.com/Starrapter. And as I said off the top, you can also listen to us via MP3, via anywhere you can download podcasts. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. This week we had just one new release, and that was with Darth Vader issue number 28. And that is when Sabe is actually brought to the Emperor himself on Coruscant. Yeah, it's very far-fetched for those of you that aren't like up to speed on Darth Vader. Apparently, Sabe has come into the picture. Yes, that's the identical handmaiden to Padme back in episode 1, Phantom Menace. So we have this whole pairing, and she's basically getting under the skin of Vader, and it turns out that she's part of the Empire as an officer now, and he's promoted. So it's a whole big thing now. But we're getting closer to the events of the Hidden Empire storyline here. So we're gonna see how that goes. Lots of new comics coming out in November, so looking forward to that. But here we're going to get into earnest for our main discussion topic of the evening. That is, of course, our breakdown for Andor Episode 7, titled Announcement. And we are focusing on this. I know last week we could only cut our conversation a little bit shorter since we were talking about Comic-Con and 2 episodes. But we're going to go into a real deep dive this week because I have quite a bit of notes. And I'm going to run through just basically this episode for me was a good turning point for the series. We deal with the aftermath of what happens in Aldhani, the big rebel heist of 80 million credits from the coffers and everything of the people over there in the Empire of that sector. So we get to see from a top level view what's happening with the Empire, what's happening with the ISB cracking down. We get to see the effects of, even in episode 3 of the series, what happened on Ferrix with all of the Imperial support there. We get to see what's going on with Kirill and his mother. We get to see what's going on with Cassian at a resort now, spending his cash like he doesn't care. There's so many storylines, and of course, how can I forget to mention, or not mention, the Mon Mothma storyline with Perrin, and now this new guy from Chandrilla named Tay, or one of our previous friends. So we have so much to get into, but I'll say off the top, again, another episode that has basically no action. But for me, I think there was so much momentum in this episode, even going into the spycraft with, I think her name's like Clea or Kia and Vel over there on Coruscant, just like kind of going through this area and doing the spycraft stuff. Like, everything was so well done. You could just feel the edge of everything happening. Like, everybody's on edge, everybody's eager, because especially if you're on the rebel side of things, you are on the brink of a new movement, but you're also on the brink of being discovered at the same time. So there's all this tension that has been building up, and we're really feeling its effect. So overall, fantastic episode. I'm going to throw this over to Ben. I know we were talking. I know you might have a similar kind of feelings that I did in this episode, right?
Yeah, I mean, for our listeners, like this week, to put context on the whole my whole opinion on the show. I've been pretty neutral to kind of iffy on it, and Chris, you were like in our group chat, you were like, "Wow, you actually like the show now." But yeah, I do. I like the show. I like this episode a lot. I thought it was by far the best episode of the series, and that's just because of like everything that you mentioned, like the different character moments, whether it be Cassian doing his thing, the stuff with Mon Mothma, stuff with the Empire. Like I feel like it was all done really well. The way the episode ended was really interesting because it opened up a lot of new potential storylines for all of our characters. And overall, I just think the episode was so good, and I think this series would have been a lot better so far on some of the slower earlier episodes. Like this episode, as you mentioned, it doesn't really have action in it, but I think the editing was done so well that the scenes were cut shorter. We didn't linger on one scene for like way too long and like sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there. Instead, we actually kept it going, like not really fast, but the pace was kept to a certain extent throughout the whole episode, where you just weren't sitting on a scene. I think we mentioned it last week, Milton. Like when when you're watching a scene, I think you had brought it up. You're like, all right, you were looking down at your phone or whatever, during parts of some of the episodes. And I feel like this episode really didn't have that because the scenes were so not short, but they were concise and to the point. And I think that's what really made me enjoy this episode so much. And also, of course, like you mentioned, Chris, it's like the turning point and implications leading into the final, I guess, 5 episodes it would be. So like, that's a really big thing, I would say.
Yeah, Ben. Not Ben. You just said everything. Milton, what are your thoughts on this episode? First impressions as we get into our lengthy discussion here.
Yeah, I actually like this episode. I said it to myself because I actually watched it about 2 hours ago. Because I don't watch them early in the morning because I'm just so caught up with other stuff. But I tend to get to it usually before the show. But I enjoy this episode. And I think this is probably, like I said, episode 3, 6 were my favorite thus far. This is on my list too. And I think this is probably second in my book just because how it did a good job leading off of 6. And this is where I think my gripe for the show was early on was that we had so many slow episodes and it was so up and down and the pacing was kind of trash in my opinion. What we got at that heist episode, how now this is the payoff episode leading into the second half of the season. Perfect transition because now we're seeing the fallout of okay, the heist, who's it affecting, how is it affecting these people, and what's the consequences stemming from it, and then obviously that could all lead to how this season is going to end. I love this episode. I didn't have a bad moment. Well, actually, no, I take that back. Again, I am super annoyed with that character that doesn't do anything. That guy.
Curl.
He doesn't do anything.
Or Cyril.
Get him out the show. I literally get him out the show. Like that's the only thing that's negative because he does nothing for me. Literally, like he gets up, looks at the monitor. Wait, what happened? What happened? I'm like, dude, you come on, blaming the actor.
Milton, I mean, you could get paid to do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's all he gets. He looks. What happened? And then I feel like the mother knew. The mother knew before he did. She's like, oh yeah, there was like a heist. Like, how do you not know about this? Like, it's on the internet, bro. Like, it's on their version of Fox News or CNN.
Yeah.
It's like that character trash. That's the only thing about this episode I did not like. Get him out of the show. But other than that, this episode was pretty damn good. I liked it a lot. I loved how the scenes were to the point. They weren't playing around. You felt the tension. You felt the consequences of last episode in this episode.
Yeah,
because people were now like the was it IAB or IBA, like ISB. They are on notice now. They're like, okay, some shit is going down and something's happening. And clearly, Deborah, was it her first name's Deborah, the supervisor. She was right. Like they're finally understanding. Oh, this chick knows something. And I love how her character is being paid off now because, like, oh, they got to pay attention to her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was some of the best stuff. During that scene,
yeah.
Milton, I actually thought of you. Yeah, during that scene, I literally thought of you. I was like, man, I bet Milton's gonna like this specific scene a lot because you have some like backstabbing, imperial conniving stuff going on.
Yeah, because like I mean, and I will say how they wrote this. They write the Empire stuff probably the strongest of the show in my opinion. Like the Imperial stuff with the ISB is pretty damn badass and it's strong. That's the strongest part of the show, and I can clearly see how it's now paying off with the conflict and the, like, I'm thinking, okay, this is what it needs to be. Like I'm cool with this. So I'm hopeful the last 5 episodes get more of this type of storytelling and writing and pacing.
So what we know so far, and I don't know where this came out of, some credible source that I forget, but we're gonna have another 3-episode arc, if you will, like we've had before, episodes 1 through 3 and 4 through 6, and we're gonna get a duality finale, like a part 1, part 2 sort of thing for the last 2 episodes. For that'll make up the last 5 episodes. So yeah, we got a lot to look forward to. Let's kind of go from the beginning, and yeah, I know you're not too keen on this moment as you just explained, Milton, but the whole stuff with Cyril Karn, and yeah, I'll admit, I was like, okay, have they had too many scenes of him opening up the episode with him looking at the wall with the window? Because he loves those action figures. He's kind of like me. He's got his Phase 1 clone troopers there on the shelf. And he's just staring at his figures, and he's looking sad. But like, I'm kind of there with you a little bit. Like, okay, but we do get at least a little bit more of a story in this episode. But yeah, with his mother constantly berating him, asking him about his suit, the brown suit with the collar. Oh, you adjusted that? Oh, I had it tailored. So this guy just loves being his best at all aspects of it, and everything with the HoloNet was kind of cool. That's what's so nice about this episode, is we've never gotten this in Star Wars before, where we never got to see that with like what happened with the Death Star. Like, we didn't go in Empire Strikes Back and like have a guy turning on like the HoloNet news and being like, hey, look at the rebels have destroyed the Death Star. Like, we've never seen this vantage point of the everyday people getting their news to them through the galaxy, and it's something that I've read about in the books, plenty in the comics, but to see it on the live action is really exciting. So this episode Tony Gilroy did here and the team was just to connect all the storylines around like one flashpoint moment, and we're getting it right in the beginning of the episode from just like the people just living in the middle class people living on Coruscant, but what did you think about all that aspect of it, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be real, I think his mom's more of an interesting character than him. But yeah, I mean, I guess like you mentioned, like with me, I think the main valuable parts of seeing like characters like him and his mom, like those type of scenes, are it kind of not tangibilizes, like, it gives us like an actual idea of like, all right, what does like inside someone's house, like watching the news look like, the everyday person, like it gives us that aspect. So it's like world building. So, I think those are the main value points that come out of scenes like that, where it's like, it's world building. Because yeah, I kind of like perked up too, like when they turned on the news and you heard like the newscast thing, that's pretty interesting, like seeing that actually in Star Wars. So like, that was my like big takeaway from it was, it was really just a really nice piece of world building more than actually what the scene meant like for the story,
Yeah, and then Milton, what'd you think about just the working conditions of like the everyday middle class kind of people, whatever you want to call them, that are working in like their 9-to-5 jobs? They're all in this uniform kind of procedural kind of thing with the computers. Like, it was like kind of sad. I was like, wow, this looks really engaging. Whatever they're doing, counting numbers all day across the computer screen, very mundane activity. But you get to see Cyril Karn, like, and this is where I had thoughts that he'd be for the rebels, but anymore I think he's just going to be an imperial extremist or whatever, just an extremist toward Andor. He doesn't have to be part of the Empire to still want to kill him. because he just goes off a little bit with too much information when it comes to this guy that's trying to interview him. He just goes off. Like when he invites him to ask him about Morlana 1, he just starts going on about, I was trying to get him and he got away and he killed. I love how the guy's reaction was just like, and we're going to wipe that off the record and here's your spot right here. That's just like,
yeah, I don't know this. Well, to answer your question about the working conditions, to me, it was, it kind of had like that THX feel to it, of like how it's just very like just everyone's the same, there's really no individuality. There's just like, hey, you know what, you punch in, you punch out, you do your job, you get out of there,
Yeah.
There's really no time for personality. There's no time for color. And you notice the color palette.
Oh yeah.
It's very much like that imperial black, gray, and white. And yeah, I'm sure there's probably some color within there, but you don't really see it. And it's on purpose because the Empire they got rid of the Old Republic. The Old Republic was colorful. The color palette of Coruscant's different because it's the Empire. So I liked how it looked. It made sense to me. Again, but when it comes to this character, anytime he's on screen, I'm just not interested. I'm like, bro, just get out the show. I'm saying I would tell Tony Gilroy to his face right now. I'm like, this character's trash. Please tell me there's a payoff with this.
No, I mean, what if we get to what if we get to the season finale just to appease your likeness of this character? We get to the season finale, all this action happens with Cassian and everybody, and the final scene is him just like staring into the camera for a minute.
Then I'm not watching season 2. I'm like, you wasted my time for this? That's a lie. I'll watch season 2, but what I'm saying, I'd be mad. Like y'all would hear about it. I'm like, this is retarded. I'm like, why are we?
Well, I mean, to be real though about that character, like you do bring up a really good point. Like honestly, even from like your positive points with him, Chris, I really do feel like his character specifically, we haven't got a clear story just yet of where he's going. Like it's just like scene after scene. Yeah, there's no motivation to pull us in. Like, why should we be interested?
No, there's plenty of motivation. The last episode, he looked at Cassian Andor's hologram. This episode, he's talking about Cassian. So we know he's after him. Like, we know he wants to, like,
but here's the thing, though. They don't make that clear. I mean, yeah.
It's very nuanced. Very nuanced. Yeah.
And maybe that's why I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. Because I'm thinking, no, you need to make it obvious. Because clearly, everyone else's agenda is obvious in the show.
I think,
so it's like, so it's like with him, because either he must be a special character that we've heard of they're just not revealing who he is yet, or they're just like, no, we're going to do pretty much like a M. Night Shyamalan and just like try to fool you a little bit. As I'm like, no, treat me like I'm 3. Tell me what the hell's going on, because I do not want to guess with him because he's not interesting enough to guess.
I think
you don't always have to show. In storytelling, you can imply it, and people tend to get that if you imply it and do it correctly. In this case, you got to show me and tell me what he's doing with him, because there's nothing I can get. He's just mad because he got fired, because he's a hardcore extremist, rule follower. Yes, I get that component. He wants to get his record expunged. However, what else is he going to do? How does he add to Cassian's story or the rebellion story? I'm not seeing that.
I think he's the inverse of Cassian. I think that's basically why they're spending so much time. We're gonna eventually see them conflict, because I mean that was the whole thing. Like, he got beaten down and humiliated by Cassian. He got like tied up or whatever. And now at the end of this episode, they end the episode with this character specifically. They're showing him in like the doldrum of his daily routine, and they're showing him like, look at the ceiling. Like, I think that's it. I think that this is his breaking point between going home, having to deal with his mother yelling at him all the time, then go to this job where he just doesn't want to be there. I think this is the next episode. And here's what's going to happen. We're going to talk about the Imperial stuff in detail right now. The last point on this is Dedra Meero. I think now she has the power to research more of what's happened on Ferrix. She's going to contact him. And that's how he's going to get involved. The next episode, those two are going to meet. And she's going to have him by her side to know everything about Cassian, and he's somehow going to get go along on the adventure to hunt him down, and that's where we're gonna go there. So let's get into the Imperials, because this was freaking amazing. What was happening there? Right from the get-go, you hear this narration. You see Deirdre getting ready. There's a big call to arms. We see in the last episode, everyone was called to this office. And wouldn't you know it, I know, Milton, you asked about it before, but some good old Imperial Clone Wars veteran there, none other than Admiral Yularen, shows up on the scene, and he is just swinging down the hammer and saying, we got to tighten our grip on the galaxy. I've heard from the Emperor himself. Milton, I'm going to go to you on this one because I haven't heard your reaction. What was your reaction to Yularen?
Let's go, bro. Like we saw how he was in Clone Wars. All right, was this the same actor or no?
No. Unfortunately,
Okay.
Tom Kane that voiced him.
Kane, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew the voice didn't seem right, but I'm thinking, okay, because I realized it was him. Like, no, they did a good job at portraying the character because he was a hard ass as a Republic admiral, whatever he was, and he was very much like a rule follower and all about structure and everything. And when he name dropped Palpatine, he's like, yeah, I spoke to Palpatine directly yesterday or something like that, and I was like,
I know.
okay, like you got that type of access. Hey, that's what's up, but that's dope. But that tells you something though about that character because not many people think about it.
Oh yeah.
Not many people have access to Palpatine or Vader. There's maybe 5 people: Lauren, not Krennic, Tarkin,
Masameda, the Grand Vizier,
Vader, obviously, and then the bald-headed chick.
Oh, Sly Moore.
Yeah, that's it. It's probably 5 people tops. So like for this guy to sit there and be like, hey, I spoke to the Emperor directly. This is what he's going on. He's giving us all the resources we need to take the lead on this, and we're going to wreck shop. I love that scene because I love seeing him. I love how they're saying, listen, we're not playing around no more. We know this is a legit threat. We got to lock shit down, and I love it. This was my favorite scene in the whole show, in the whole episode. I love the scheming, the backstabbing. I love that secretary, the female secretary or supervisor. She is starting to get some credibility now. Like she's right the whole time, and I love that how that guy got the egg on his face. And I just think that scene was great. And the best part about that scene was when it cut to the next scene with their superior. He's like, oh, we need blah, 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 blah. And the guy's like, yeah, she got the records unauthorized. Remember, you berated her. He's like, And then he like pretty much chastises him and say, nah, she was right. Follow me. I know what you're trying to do. Watch your back, but you're on the right track. Loved it. Because that's strong storytelling. It just makes sense how from episode 1 to now, how everything played out led up to something. And now we're okay, this is a player now in this show.
Well, what's so brilliant is how all these storylines are connecting so directly, even though they're at opposite sides with opposite characters that haven't even met yet. What Andor has done is somehow messed with her career to actually plummet her upward. And the fact that they had all and it was funny because the same Major Pendergast, who's played by the same guy that did Meister Qyburn in Game of Thrones, that guy set up these sector lines. And everybody had to stay in their jurisdiction. And, well, guess what? The rebels took advantage of that. They would hit one sector, then they would hit another sector, knowing that the Imperials couldn't really investigate and put 2 and 2 together because they were so individualized. But then she takes that information and says, okay, this guy literally gave me all the power, or Yularen gave me all the power. I'm going to just get the information finally. I've had a lucky day. She's very opportunistic, which I like, because a lot of Imperials are like that, but she didn't really break any rules. Like, she just stayed in her lane and just thought outside the box. And then even Pendergast is like, yeah, the sector ideas, they don't even really work anywhere. Anyway, you're right. Like, she just had the gall and the boldness to stand in front of her leaders and everything, and just basically called her superior's ideas kind of outdated in front of his face and everybody else's. Right. And he was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Okay, he can get off of this stage and then you can take his place.
Yeah, and what's nice about that too, you noticed the dynamic of the show thus far. You notice there's rarely any women in the Empire. Have you guys noticed that?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
especially in this particular organization, and for her to be that one woman step to a group of men, especially the lead guy in her particular sector, and say, "Listen, it's outdated. However, like, respect the chain of command, but I had to go, and go around it to really say, hey, I'm loyal to this. I need to show you that, you guys need to change." Her to do that, like, and as a woman, love it. And I think that's a great that's a great thing that they're showing in this show. Now, some people might say, "Oh, that's woke culture." It's like, no. Look at the original trilogy. How many Imperial officers were women?
Yeah.
None. We barely
Yep.
saw it. It's consistent all over the board. Look at the Republic. A lot of women senators, a lot of women, in like politics or military Jedi. You know what I'm saying? Like, shifted on purpose. Look at Nazi Germany. How many women were generals or leaders or in politicians in Nazi Germany? None. Barely. I'm sure there was one or two, but I'm sure there really wasn't many. It's a reflection of that. George Lucas made the empire pretty much Nazi Germany.
Yep. Yep. Ben,
So
what
it was cool.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was cool to see that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I completely agree with like all of your guys' points. Like, there's not even much more to make about it. Like, you took all the words out of my mouth. Like, I really, like, for me, ever since her character has been introduced, especially, maybe it was the second episode, whatever episode she was like, it's too random to be a plan or whatever. Like, that whole little speech she gave, like, her character has been easily one of the probably top two, top three most interesting characters for me, anyways, for this whole series. Just because it's like, like, to me, when it comes to the Empire stuff, like, I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, like, when any of the Empire stuff is on screen, I'm like glued to the screen. It's like, I want to know what's going on. I can't look at my phone. Like, I'll look at my phone during all the serial Karn stuff. Like, but when it comes to the Empire stuff, I'm just glued to the screen, and a lot of that has to do with her, just because like the actress that's playing her is doing such a great job at it. And then as you mentioned, Milton, like her, in the Empire, like, there's not women really. I mean, in the original trilogy, there's no female
None.
Imperials. So the fact that she's that high up, able to even like, I guess, talk back without getting reprimanded, like that, or like challenge her superiors without getting reprimanded. Like, that's a big, like, I guess, sign of respect, etc. Because I mean, heck, even in Rogue One, look at how Tarkin treated Krennic. Like, he basically just said, "You're screwed." So like, yeah. So like, the fact that they listened to this woman, like, that's cool. And then, of course, as we all mentioned, like, seeing Yularen, that's amazing. Like, at first, as I mentioned in our group chat, I was like, man, is that Yularen? I was like, oh wait, that is, like, and it was just great seeing him. And like, that type of stuff, just brings up the whole thing of like cameos in Star Wars. Like, I feel like a lot of people will, I've seen some people like talk about this show, of course, compared to The Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Kenobi, and be like, oh, it doesn't rely on cameos and fan service to like be good. But the thing is, to me, like, as long as a cameo or fan service works, that's not a bad thing. Like, fan service is bad if it's bad, but if it's good, it's good. And like, in this case, it was good. Like, if we want to get technical about it, like, why could have that not been Imperial Officer number 256 instead of Yularen? Like, that's a nice little cameo, and it just fits the character and fits the time period, so it works well for the story.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I like seeing cameos like that, and I feel like we'll see other little cameos like that sprinkled in potentially throughout this series as well. Maybe that we're not expecting, in terms of like the Empire side. Like, maybe we'll see what's his name, guy from Rebels, Callus. Like, maybe we'll see him eventually.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think there's a chance we see potential characters like that just worked into the story versus like, just random Imperial officers.
Yeah, I mean, it's good because it makes sense when you have a galactic level threat that happened. you're going to see your chain of command. And that's what's nice about this. We get to see some of the lower officers in the ISB. We get to see Major Pendergast, but we get to see actually his superior, which would be Colonel Yularen. And his next superior is the Emperor. So now we have this cool like chain of command and she even has a subordinate that is like her assistant that's helping her out. So we get to see that whole chain of command through the Empire, which is something that's pretty neat because we're really taking a deep dive, and because of consequences that happens, we're seeing just how everything goes. But yeah, let's keep it.
I love
yeah,
that.
go ahead. Yeah.
Two things. One, just want to clarify if anyone's going to say like that. That's not true about the women. There are more women in the Empire. We just don't know about them. And
Exactly.
I just know two. Either like the supervisor and an Iden Versio Battlefront. That's only two that I know that are significant Imperial women that are actually doing something, that are active. I'm sure there's more in canon.
There's more in canon. Yep.
Yeah, like obviously Lost Stars.
Let me see.
One ship, the one pilot, or whatever. Like, yeah, I mean they're in there. It's just you don't really see them.
Even the girl from Rebels that gets blown up. During the episode.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, so there are women in the Empire, just not many of them. And my second point is, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'll throw in there real quick for you.
Zara.
I guess my point when I said there was no like Imperial women, I guess I was implying the original trilogy movies.
I was saying the same thing about my point too. I was saying that about my point as well because some people like to say y'all ain't really being clear. I'm like, yes, we are. We're just trying to like clarify it. And my second point is, that subordinate, I swear to God, he looks like a Tarkin like clone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
he does.
Like, is that like Tarkin's like son or something? Like, I mean, maybe
it's
I'm crazy, but that's just what I see when I see him.
But what I'm getting from Dedra Miro is some strong Thrawn vibes. Like, this is the stuff that Thrawn was doing in that novel from 2017, where he is a lieutenant. And I mentioned this. I made a video about the timeline and history of Wilf Yularen, like his entire history from Clone Wars. He's even quite a few pieces in the Thrawn books that Zahn did back in 2017, 18, or whatever. But anyway, yeah, Thrawn would be like working in the confines, the parameters of the Empire. And yes, he would go outside the lines sometimes to get justice, but it would end up being a success. So like her, and the thing was, everybody was always against Thrawn because he was the only alien in the Empire. Which is funny because actually in this episode, I don't know if you guys noticed, we see our first like alien Imperial that's doling out the justice behind Cassian Andor in that like justice scene. I was like, wait, there's an alien Imperial with like the Veers armor on. Like, holy crap. But anyway, usually there isn't any aliens in the Empire, and if there are, everybody has such strong prejudice against them. So I can almost see like the same thing happening. I mean, I don't know what the in-universe reaction to women of power being in the Empire is, but I could be kind of sure that these people are like looking down on her maybe a little bit, being like, we can't have this maybe or something. So she's like going against the grain and has more of an uphill battle maybe than the other people. I mean, why else haven't we seen a lot of female Imperials, right? I mean, you can look at the lore maybe and see that. I mean, we have Commander Zara from the comics, and she's like a prodigy of Wilhoff Tarkin. So yeah, I said Wilhoff Yularen. I think at some point. No, it's Wolf Yularen. Wolf Yularen. But anyway, two leaders of the Empire. Of course, I get them confused. But yeah, let's talk about more Coruscant. And you mentioned this, Milton. I wanted to make sure I spend some time, at least a little bit on time. We have the character, and I did confirm her name, Clea. She works for the character of Luthen Rael. And this scene, first off, has a discussion between two characters that I had to do a double take, because they're two characters that have a drastically different appearance when they're both talking to one another. You have Vel, that's all looks beautiful and everything. Now that she's in a civilized area, her hair is all down and everything. I'm like, oh wow, that's actually the same character. And the same thing with Clea. We usually see her with her hair up and it's down. I'm like, wait, who is this character at first? Is this a new character? No, they just look way different in this circumstance. But anyway, I really loved like the long drawn out scenes of Clea walking through the Empire, because you see how much more empty it is. I guess a lot more people are like under curfew maybe or something where they're inside. But as Milton said, you could easily tell what era we are in. There's a lot less color, a lot less shininess. Everything is just stark white basically. It's just imperial plainness, just walking through the place. And one thing I noticed, I don't know if it was intentional, but George Lucas back in the 2000s was trying to get a Star Wars Underworld TV series off the ground. And as we know, it couldn't have the finances to pull it off back then. His vision just couldn't catch up with technology or vice versa. But there was some unused footage that circulated YouTube about a year or two ago. And man, oh man, if I don't know if they made this as a reference, but there's a girl walking around in high heels around Coruscant. And I think this is the first time we actually see a woman in high heels in Star Wars. I don't know why I know that, but I just never seen like something like that. Anyway, so I was like, are they making a reference to that girl that was walking through Coruscant in the Star Wars Underworld? Because we haven't seen Coruscant from this angle before. So I don't know about you guys, but I was like, is that an homage to something that never got off the ground? That other piece of Star Wars material that's on the shelf? They're like, let's make a nod to that of this spy walking through, because it's almost like the same setup, except that one in our Underworld show was at night. This one's in broad daylight. So, but yeah, let's throw it to either of you. What was your thoughts on just like this cool like exploration of Star Wars Coruscant, spy in broad daylight, like hiding in plain sight kind of thing?
I like it. I mean, look, I always like these scenes with Coruscant. I mean, Coruscant's probably my favorite planet in Star Wars. I love that they're really showing more of that planet in depth. Obviously, seeing this back alley meeting makes sense because it's just a formation of the rebellion. You know, this is what happens when you're trying to start revolution. And what's that chick's name? Not Val, the other one that spoke.
That is Clea.
Yeah, Clea. She says this. Like, this is how things are done when you're trying to get things moving. When you try to get a rebellion moving, you have to kill some people. You got to sacrifice. You can't send messages open. Like that. You got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like I've always said, the last 4 or 5 weeks been doing these reviews, they've made fear a character in this show. Every time someone talks about something, about anything rebellion related or making moves related, you can sense there's significant fear. I think Luthen speaks on it. He's like, we need that. It's like we need the fear or something to that nature. And it's like, yeah, I love it. So that scene was awesome. It made sense to me.
Ben, what was your reaction on seeing Coruscant? We'll just get into the Coruscant aesthetic because there's a lot more to talk about later on in the scene. But just the ambiance, the feel of like just walking through. I'd even mention our first look at stormtroopers more than halfway through the season. We've finally seen stormtroopers.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was all done really well. Like you said, we really got the vibe of like the Imperial lockdown. I would say like that was really nice. Just seeing like, I mean, we see it throughout this whole episode really of the more and more like building up of fear and building up of like the whole lockdown of like how the Empire is basically slowly like just really, really controlling the galaxy. So that was a part I really liked. And then of course like the visuals of it, it's just nice getting to expand on a lot of these planets that we've been to before, but we haven't really seen in depth because like in like say the prequel trilogy, you have when we go and like visit Coruscant, we basically just see a couple locations. We see the temple, we see the bar in episode 2, we see like the speeder chase, things like that, but we don't see like the actual like say everyday like just like walking around the city type feel. So like that's a really nice bonus I like to see in a show like this. Just because, in a movie, you don't have time for a lot of, like, city explorations and things like that. Like, I mean, look at, like A New Hope with Tatooine. We go to Mos Eisley, and we cut basically right into the bar, or them walking into the bar, like versus like going and walking through the buildings to get to the bar, blah 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 blah, like all those things. So like it's cool just getting like an exploration of Coruscant.
Yeah, so let's get into the details of what they were talking about, because that was pretty tantalizing for me, is the fact that, they're asking, like Milton was bringing up about the communication, just the tension that they're all in, the pressure that they're all in, but the fact that this is a spy story at its core, spy thriller as it was originally promoted, and the people that Cassian's working for think he's a loose end. So now we have another faction that's after Cassian Andor. So we got the Empire, now we got Luthen's people. But Vel definitely seems like she's hesitant in that moment when Clea says, like, you want to off him? And she's like, yeah, you can't learn about Luthen. And that leads me to believe, who is Luthen? Because this is another question that has been raised since like episode 3 or 4, when Cassian first meets him. He asks Vel, and she's like, no one answer that. Like, what is this guy's what is his backstory? We know he owns a store. It's his facade for his dealings with Mon Mothma. But what is he really? Like, is that even his real name, Luthen Rael? Like, there's so much mystery around this guy. Milton, do you have any ideas, or how'd you feel about that whole discussion there?
I mean, again, like I mentioned, it makes sense. Like, everything they said was not out of order, especially when it comes to trying to get rid of Cassian Andor. I mean, look, they used him.
Mm-hmm.
He completed the job, left. Now they say, hey, we have to clean up this potential threat because he could open his mouth. And again, they don't know him like that, so it makes sense that they would get rid of him, and they used him for their own purpose. As for who Luthen is, honestly, I don't know. I haven't really had a thought about that. I mean, hopefully he's someone that's significant. I mean, he is significant in the show.
Yeah.
But obviously, I don't know if it's a character that we already know, if that's his true and even nature. But overall, like I said, I like the conversation. It made sense. And I'm hoping they have a really good payoff when it comes to Luthen's character development at the end.
Yeah, because we even get that conversation with Andor and Bix in this episode. And that's her name, right? Bix? Yeah, and again, it comes up. It's like he asks her, "How do you know him?" Oh, he just gives me information. He goes, he knew everything about Morlana 1 already. He knew everything about what was going to happen there ahead of time. Like, where is this guy getting this information from? He's had to be involved with the Imperial somehow, or the Republic somehow, to have some backdoor access to some kind of things.
I think there's a chance actually with his character that maybe he's not significant in terms of like, oh, this could be fill in the blank big character. I think there's a chance that he is getting his info from Saul Guerrera, and basically, our main rebels group, say with Mon Mothma and Luthen and the other people involved, they're probably it's like getting your info from an extremist. Like, why? Like, we want to do this rebellion thing, but we don't want to go to the extreme. So I feel like there's a chance, like the revelation type moment of the series may be like, oh my gosh, he's getting info from Saul Guerrera, like that type of thing. Because, at this point, we're only a few years out from Rogue One, and obviously, like, Saul's like on the like extremist side of things. So I think there's a chance that it might go in that direction, actually.
Yeah, let's transfer over to another really good Coruscant scene. Again, was between Luthen Rael and Mon Mothma. She comes over unannounced. And it was this whole thing about, and we've heard this before about other fiction and different things, about when somebody gets in over their head. Like, Mon Mothma thought that, fueling the rebellion would be like a little bit less violent, a little bit less noticeable. They'd have a win here, a win there, and nothing really big. But now the entire galaxy knows. Now everything's on fire here, basically. And she's not happy about it. And I love what Luthen Rael does. It's just like really cool metaphor that he's dealing with in a situation where he grabs the mace and he's like, no one makes a weapon without intending to use it or something. And he's like gonna give her like a weapon, which would basically mean like we are going to be brutal at this. Like if they're brutal to us, we'll be brutal back to them. If people die, that's what happens. Like that's very much Saw Gerrera talking, you know? So it'd be interesting. Like I don't know if Saw Gerrera is going to be like a contemporary, like a partner, or is Saw Gerrera technically going to be the leader of all this and the next step up from Luthen Rael, as you said, Ben? But I really dug this conversation because they don't even go in the back room. Like that driver just standing there. If he's a lip reader, he can tell exactly what they're talking about. But they're just kind of speaking, and I just love Stellan Skarsgård's acting because at one moment he'll be like putting on this facade of this like wealthy guy that's selling like Plo Koon's mask and everything and some like Gungan shields, and the next moment he's like basically has the gravelly voice again, just like back channeling Luthen again. So I got an awesome vibe from this interaction here because it just goes into that whole hiding in plain sight, dealing. I mean, this comes up many times in this episode. Like they're on it's crazy. They're on the Imperial headquarters planet, and that's where the start of the rebellion is happening. Literally at the core, underneath the nose of the Emperor.
Man, they don't mind their surroundings, as Ra's al Ghul would say from Batman Begins. When I say that, I mean the Empire. But no, I think that was a dope scene. I like Mon Mothma's character. She clearly see she's not. Is she over her head? I don't know, but they make you think that she doesn't know what she's doing, or she might be. This would be too much for her. Really, I think she's very much in control. I think she's just obviously seeing some things that she didn't foresee. But no, I think that back and forth was perfect.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you both. Like the back and forth, I thought was done really well. Of course, the acting between the two were great. And yeah, just like hiding in plain sight under the Empire's nose, like that's always such a good trope. I feel like in just movies in general, movies, shows, etc. in general, because it's just like kind of like not a funny thing, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like a funny little haha look that we're right here, right next to the bad guys, and they don't even know it, like that type of thing. So those type of tropes are always fun, I think. And yeah, like Luthen, like going back and forth on his personalities, like that's always great. Yeah, I just think it's done. It's being done really well. And yeah, I'm really interested though to see where his character goes, because like we're kind of like stepping up the ladder of his character, like going from A to B to C to D, like we're moving up and up and up with his character. So like, is the next step going to be introducing him with a Saw Gerrera, or is it going to be something like him bouncing another idea off Mon Mothma, being like, hey, let's do this, and she's like, no, we can't do that, and then he's like, all right, let me go meet with the Saw Gerrera guy, potentially type deal. Like I think we're going to get to a point, especially with the implications, say, with Mon Mothma's character, because whether she's like in over her head or just realizing like what could happen when it comes to like all of this. I think we're going to get to a point, something's got to push her more into this. So I feel like some type of point of action with like Luthen's character is going to potentially be that driver at this point, the way the story's going.
Yeah, heck yeah. So talking about more with Mon Mothma, we finally get the dinner scene. We finally get this really cool scene. It's been teased to us for a couple episodes now. We've seen a lot of bits and pieces of it in the trailers. And this was another hiding in plain sight, amazing conversation. This actually might have been my favorite segment of this show, because of this episode at least, because there's so much tension. It was so much like a James Bond movie for me. Like there's so many scenes in James Bond where it's just like James Bond like talking to the villain at like a big fancy gathering, and they're like being very respectful of one another. Like, yeah, they're not gonna kill each other right there on the floor in front of all these people, but they're making shots back at one another. Or in this case, she's making deals with one another. And you can see like Imperial people that are there. And we know we're supposed to be special guests, which could be eventually, maybe we'll see, Vizier in the next episode, Masa Meda, or Sly Moore too, or something like that. But It was interesting. You get to really, I feel like you learn so much about Mon Mothma in this little segment here. I mean, you could already see like the fact that like her husband is with like three different women in like that 5 minutes, and then she's like very much like hanging on to this guy that's like her, her childhood friend or maybe lover at some point. And like, obviously the marriage is not going well, as we've been saying over and over again. Like, they're just together, like her and Perrin are just together for political purposes. But like, you get a little bit of something from her in this point. But for me, I just loved the going back and forth. And there's a lot of very kinetic because like they're moving from room to room, going back, and it's a very what I like the scenes about Andor. I've noticed a lot is there's a lot of things happening during conversations, whether it be they could be mundane as heck, like having a bowl of cereal, or it could be like Marva in later on in the episode watering her plants as she's talking to Cassian Andor about the rebellion. So like there's lots of things that keep us engaged as the viewers to like make conversations where you could have somebody just standing still even more interesting. But yeah, I'll throw it over to Milton. What did you think about this whole segment here?
Mon Mothma is so hot, dude. She's fire, bro. Like, I'm not even joking. Like that's the first thing I took from, like, I mean, she looked fire throughout the whole show, that's far facts. Like, this particular scene, like, that dress she was wearing, oh my God. Like, 10. I don't know. I just can't take my eyes off the screen with her because, like, just how she carries herself.
Yeah.
And she's back dealing, being cagey, whatever. Like, she has like a grace about her where I'm just like, you know what? If you want to plot against me, that's totally fine. Like, she just does it. She just does it in a matter that's like classy yet like she's in control. You can see some of that insecurity, but she's good at like putting it off. And she'll embrace it just to get. I feel like she uses her own fears and insecurities as a weapon to show it like to her enemies or to her allies. Say, hey, I need this from you, but like really, I'm in control the whole time. I just need you to think that I'm like in a bad spot. Now she needs this guy to get access to her funds.
Yeah,
I get that, but I think honestly, it's Mon Mothma. She could have figured out another way if she really, really had to. I think this guy going to play a pivotal role in obviously the formation of the rebellion, and I can see him potentially be turning on her out of like loyalty for like something regarding the Empire, because they do talk about their ideals are different, or she might not like his ideals in politics, because he digs at her about how Coruscant has changed her. She's like, really, is that bad? He really wouldn't say, but he's like, we all change to adapt or something to that nature.
Yeah, so she actually approached him and says, like, I've gone over a couple options, but this is the best one. So she's got a couple other plans in her back pocket, but it's like, okay, I can kind of goad this guy. We used to be around each other quite a lot and whatnot. But yeah, Ben, what was your whole thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much everything Milton said. Of course, like Genevieve O'Reilly looks great. And then like the whole sequence I thought was done really well, and almost like, I mean, I guess like you mentioned, Chris, when you opened this part of the show, it felt kind of like a James Bondy-esque sequence for sure. Like it did feel kind of like, say, in Casino Royale, like, when James is sitting there talking across the table with the villain, like that sort of stuff. Like it felt like that type of tension for sure. So that's definitely really really nice. And then like the different aspects of it, like the potentials of the scene. Like as soon as we got to that scene and I realized it was, this is what scene we were in, I was like glued to the screen, because it was like, who could pop up?
Yeah.
Like any Imperials are on the table to pop up. Like, I mean, I half expected to expect the Emperor to show up to something, just because it's like the Emperor. That one, again, going back to my cameo and fan service thing, that would not be a bad cameo or fan service at that point. I mean, it makes sense. It fit. Like, if it's all these highfalutin senators and stuff, like, he would potentially be there. So, just seeing like the gravitas of the scene like that, I thought was done really well. And then just yeah, like the overall implications of like Mon Mothma potentially getting help or not getting help from this guy, like depending on how his character like responds to all of this. And then I think more and more the way they're going with the show, with all the hints of the Emperor, I think we're going to see the Emperor to one degree or another at some point in this show, just because it's like we keep getting hints about him, we keep getting hints about him, we keep getting like foreshadowing. Like I feel like the way this scene was cut up, foreshadowing, like it just seems like we're heading in that direction. We're gonna get like there has to be a payoff. You know what I'm saying? Like because we have so many little Easter eggs of the Emperor, and there has to be a payoff of like a speech or something. You know,
But
like I don't think he's gonna directly interact with Mon Mothma. Like, I mean that would be interesting, but I think it's going to be more of a potential hologram speech or something we see at some point. But this show's doing it in a way, where it's just building and building versus like throwing it to us right away. Like the payoff, if we see the Emperor, the payoff will be worth it, in my opinion. So I think it's trending in a really good direction. And like this whole conversation, of course, like sets things in motion more for Mon Mothma as well as this senator. And of course, like the other implications I just mentioned with like the Emperor or other potential cameos.
Yeah, here's the thing about it. If it was any other show like Obi-Wan or Mando or something of that nature, I would say definitely. But the fact that they mention the Emperor so many times, even with Yularen, if it was a movie or if it was a show, we would have seen Yularen talking to the Emperor. Like that would have been like a quick like scene. Yularen would be talking to the Emperor and yada yada yada.
Yep.
But I like this show's restraint and its nuance. In fact, that it doesn't rely on those things. Like it just mentions them. Same thing with we'll talk.
Well, Chris, that's why, like I mentioned, I think the payoff for it will be good. Like we're not getting these Emperor cutaways with Yularen, with Mon Mothma, with whoever, because I think we're gonna get an Emperor moment in the show, maybe talking to the Senate, talking to the galaxy. Like maybe at the end of the show we get the Emperor giving some type of a speech about this like rebel uprising or something.
True.
Like I think we're heading to a potential cameo, but like as you mentioned, they're doing it in a good way where they're the Emperor is still kind of looming over certain things, but we're not seeing him.
Yeah. We have another scene. We're gonna get off of Coruscant now. We're gonna go back. Yep. Tal Downey, and I was happy about this because this episode has the most character scenes of any Andor episode yet. Everything's come together from the first 3 episodes, from the last previous 3 episodes. We got to look at what's going on with Cinta and how she's surviving out there on Aldhani. She got left behind, and we see how quickly the Empire has latched down. They sent in a Star Destroyer, and just like how the TIE fighters were a set of fear for these people, and it's the first time we've really got any sense of terror from the TIE fighters in all the Star Wars saga. We get to see another fantastic, overwhelming overhead shot of a Star Destroyer flying above with the TIE fighters screeching. And the first time, I don't know if we've mentioned it, but the music at this point, the music in general for this episode was freaking fantastic. Nicholas Patel absolutely killed it. He had this like great like little score at this point with like it just felt so imperial, but it was cool again to check back with a character, and to see her later on that really cool speeder bike where she was like standing up like snowboarding down the mountain except with a speeder bike was really freaking cool. So there you go. It's just another ramification, another peek at, okay, we're seeing from the high level of the Imperials. Now we're actually seeing, and we'll get into with Andor as well, like getting to see what's happening with the small folk, what's going on there. So getting anything from that scene, anything you guys want to mention with that one?
I mean, for me, not really. I honestly, I get why I was in it, and I know that was a beautiful shot of the Star Destroyer coming, but what did it really serve except for saying that it's just it's reiterating that the Empire is now like fully trying to lock down everything. That scene didn't need to be in there, but I don't know. It's hard to debate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of, like you mentioned, Chris. It's like it's well shot. It it reemphasizes the point about like the Empire locking down, but it's just I feel like it's another scene thrown in. It's nothing like like you mentioned, Milton. It's kind of like it's just like an extra scene, I think.
Well, here's the thing. There's the character of Vel that was talking to Clea, and she was saying something about what happened with Cinta. So I think there's like a plot, like a C plot going on where we're gonna somehow see them two link up. So they wanted to just show the viewer like, hey, she's still alive. Because last time we seen her, she was wearing Imperial garb. And they had said, if you listen like really closely, and one of the backgrounds of the scenes, like they're like, oh yeah, the Imperials on Aldhani wound it up like 114 people to interrogate the ISB is there. So then we check back and we realize, okay, she did get away. She somehow got out of there, because I'm sure that the Empire like heavily interrogated every Imperial worker that was there. I mean, those parents that like that. Remember the family of that guy that was the commandant seen her, so they would have been like, we were infiltrated by Imperials. Like, we gotta, get interviews on every person that's worked here and figure out what the hell happened. And somehow, so we get to see, at least this scene confirms, she's living out on her own. She's gonna get the heck out of there. And I think we'll definitely see more of her and Vel. And maybe Vel will go to Cinta and be like, hey, we have to find Andor. And then maybe they'll break him out of prison. And I'm going to just keep speculating. But we'll get there eventually, because, man, oh, man, there's, like I said, there's so much to talk about this episode. We're like halfway through talking about it. Okay, maybe not that little through. We have a couple more scenes to talk about. But I do want to talk about the scenes on Ferrix between Bix and between Marva. And first off, clever use of PTSD flashbacks. I will start there, because as I mentioned with the nuances a few minutes ago with, oh yeah, they're just leaving it up to the viewer with the Emperor's dialogue between him and Yularen, and that's, assumed. And then this whole idea of like the Phase 2 clones, we get to see them, and we get to see a young Andor charging at them with a baton. So we just like have to use our imagination to see what happens there. Eventually, I'm guessing that's how he goes to prison. They probably just stun him and then send him off to Minban as a cook or something like that. But yeah, but we'll start with the flashbacks. What was your guys' take on those?
The flashback, it definitely tells more story of Cassian's relationship with his adopted father. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I loved it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think so far, flashbacks in the Disney Plus universe of Star Wars they've done a pretty good job with it, I would say, for the most part. So this is another case of it, it working out pretty well. And I just thought it was nice getting it, just because we hadn't seen him, or we hadn't seen like some of the backstory of it. So it was nice getting getting that part of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so let's talk about Marva, that whole interaction between Marva and Andor, because there's a lot to break down just with that interaction, because she's, first off, I like the fact that she literally says, I love you, and professes her love for her adopted son, because we go back to episode 2 when we see her basically, in her eyes, her and Clem are thinking, oh, we're saving this kid because the Republic is going to find out these kids are here and they're going to kill them for whatever reason. After they killed 2 Republic officers, they're going to think they're feral and they're going to just wipe them out, whatever. So that's her eyes. In her eyes, okay, we're actually saving you. We're not kidnapping you. So it's cool, because it was a little bit blurry. I know some people were talking about it's like kind of like sketchy. It's like they basically like kidnapped this kid and then like raised him. Did they really love him? Like, what happened here? So to get the acknowledgement, like, no, they saved him, and then she professes her love for her son and all this kind of thing. To see the tears, it was a really good performance by whatever actress. I don't have the name off the top of my head, but I have to commend the actress, because she's really doing awesome performances in this series so far. But yeah, so I really like that whole aspect of just the tension there. And everything, she wants to basically stay there and fight a rebellion. Like that, I wasn't expecting that her own rebellion. She's not connected to anybody, but she's had enough. And we get to see how the average day people are time and time again getting, buried in the ground by these Imperials just constricting more and more around them. And they're looking at this as a call to arms. I mean, later on we'll see Ezra Bridger's call to arms literally as he's on like the HoloNet or whatever, or the radio for the galaxy to hear. But already we're getting people to get the message to start rebelling. So Ben, what was your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a good point for her, or a good moment for her character, just because, like, like you said, the woman playing her has done a good job acting, and her whole moment, her talking about her own rebellion and this sort of stuff, I thought it was really good for her character, of course, but also, it kind of pushes Cassian's character along a little more to, he's going to think back like, oh, he's going to think back to that moment, I feel like. So I think there'll be more like ramifications for Cassian later in this series because of that. But also there's, probably potential ramifications for her as well. Like I could see, her potentially getting like taken out off screen, and we hear Cassian hears about it. So like we hear about it through Cassian, and he's like, "Oh man, wish I could have done more," type thing. You always see that with like heroes.
Yeah.
They have to like have some type of like tragedy. Like of course Cassian's gone through things, but I don't think he's like experienced tragedy in the present day per se. Like there hasn't been a moment like sure of course he's dealt with the Empire on that last mission he had, but he hasn't dealt with like actual loss with like his best friend, like the girl and that guy at the beginning of the series, the one potentially like his stepmother, like these sort of things. He hasn't dealt with a loss of any of these characters, and I feel like there's a good chance like this whole rebellion conversation is gonna really tie into his character long term in this series.
Yeah, Milton.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of those points. To me, it was a strong. I think that was probably one of the strongest things about this episode regarding that relationship. I think Cassian did a really good job at just obviously trying to express what he wanted to express, but then got the reciprocation from what's his mother's name again?
Okay, so I got the acknowledgement of her. The actress's name is Fiona Shaw, and she's playing Marva.
Marva, yes. And getting that acknowledgement from her about, obviously wanting to fight her a good fight, but then, seeing how it ties back, like you can clearly see there's a bond there. You can clearly see that she doesn't want to give up, her home. She wants to fight for it. And you got the sense that, and maybe it's me, but I felt that Marva probably threw a little shade at Cassian during that scene. Do you guys agree with me at that point or no?
Oh, 100%, I think.
Yeah. I think she was throwing some shade at him about, his actions, the rebellion now being here, and obviously she referenced Clem, how she avoids a certain street because of him being hanged or hung. I guess it's a proper way to use that word, of him when he was hung. And I think how she expressed that, there's a lot of pain, but also saying like, listen, they're partly to blame now for why the Empire isn't leaving now. They're not going to show up, occupy some stuff, and then be out. No, they're staying. So I just felt like this scene was well written, a lot of good emotions. You can clearly see that, Cassian, like you now have to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I did cause some of this, and I don't think he's willing to do that right now.
Yeah, another thing that I thought was profound that Marva mentioned was like, you could throw all the garrisons you want on Ferrix, but in my mind, I myself am protected in my own mind, or something that matter. Like it was like you could put all the walls around me, but I'm still free in my mind. You know what I mean? I love that aspect of no matter what, like I don't have to move anywhere because this is my home, and I won't be oppressed anymore, no matter what. So I love the mentality and the tenacity that she has of just standing her ground at this point.
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, that's in her nature. So,
Yeah, so elsewhere on Ferrix, we have Andor having a little bit more of redeeming qualities because he actually repays his debt and he pays like 12,000 credits or something to Bix. So I thought that was pretty honorable. That was, again, like we haven't really seen a lot of momentum from Andor with his character so far, I would say. Like he just did the mission because he was told to. But now we're seeing the return again. It was like the midway point. This is where things are coming to a head. Like he's gone back to Ferrix. He's an honorable man. He has, and we see that in Rogue One. Like he's got honor when he decides to do this like this suicide mission and everything. We're seeing bits of his character shine out, and that's what I expected from the series so far. Is like seeing bits of the good Andor coming out, and you know, I think he's gonna really feel bad for leaving Bix behind, but he's got to do what he's got to do. So, did you guys take anything away from this scene?
Yeah, I mean, I would say with Cassian in it, like it was definitely one of his better moments of the series, just because of the things that you mentioned there, Chris. Like a lot of this series so far for me with Cassian. I mean, we've talked about it for several weeks now. I feel like on this podcast, like he's been kind of like a not C character, but he's been kind of like not the most interesting character. I mean, look, we just sat here and we had a big 20-minute discussion over that little Imperial conversation between Yularen and the girl, that whole deal, because all the Imperial stuff is so interesting. Like a lot of the stuff with Cassian hasn't been interesting at all, other than obviously like the action, some of the action, some of the character moments have been good, but for a lot of his stuff, it's just been kind of bland, I guess. So like this was a nice moment, just because, like you mentioned, it shows like he's still he's honorable now in the series or getting there. Because like, I guess if we're watching this, say without the knowledge of Rogue One, this is a nice like necessary step in his character pushing forward. So yeah, for me, I thought it was done really well.
Heck yeah. So we're going to transition into our final segment of tonight's episode, and that is getting into this new planet. I mean, unless somebody else wants to correct me, unless it was in a Marvel's comic book, I do not believe we've ever gone to this new beach location. Have you guys recognized this name before? It's like called like Niamos, as I pick up the episode and watch it again. Never made notes of it. Okay, Niamos it looks like a beach retreat. Now, if we go way back to about a year ago, Ben, we gotten a lot of leaked photos from this set. I remember seeing the shore troopers. I remember seeing the same outfit that Diego Luna was wearing in this.
Yeah, I mean, there were plenty of leaks back then, and yeah, like this whole beach planet or beach getaway, like it's cool seeing these different environments in Star Wars, and also a shout out to like the composer who did the music for the whole sequence. I thought the music was really well done. Like I don't know about you guys, but it felt like the music felt like something you'd hear in like Miami or like one of those like really tropical like beach locations. Like it felt something, or like Costa Rica or something like that. So like it really felt really felt for me like we were in a beach area, like it, because so like in Rogue One, for example, at Scarif, like of course you have like the beach, but that didn't feel like an actual like beach, because it was like in an Imperial base. Like this felt like an actual vacation place. So like I thought the whole world building aspect of that was done really well. And then, of course, like we'll get into the stuff that happens with Cassian. But yeah, those are like my initial thoughts on the location.
Yeah, so this is mature Star Wars at its finest, because we open up with an episode we open up with the series where he's in a brothel. Then we open up on this point, and he basically just got it on with somebody. He's taking a shower. Like this is some Star Wars storytelling I wasn't sure we'd ever see.
Hey man, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. look. Listen, I'm just keep it real with y'all, man. Like all your listeners who are watching this episode, look, we grown. People have sex in Star Wars too, man. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I mean, yeah.
People take showers in Star Wars. Sometimes you cuddle in Star Wars. It happens. So to me, it makes sense. And you're on a beach. If you got a beautiful woman with you at the beach, you better try to cuddle with her. Okay, stop.
And I like how she's like, I got a grocery list for you. I want you to go to the store and pick up this stuff. It's just like such a normal thing in Star Wars.
Listen. Let's be real here. If we're in Cassian Andor, we got this chick with us. She's a hottie. Things happen. Can you go to the grocery store? Whatever you need, girl. I got you. It makes sense to me.
And
Cassian did what he needed.
And he has what? He has what? 200 grand he just got. Like
something like that.
I mean,
yep.
Like, hey, have a good time, man.
Right. I mean, for all we know, it could be some random chick he picked up at the beach or some old flame that he knew way back when the day who happened to just live at that beach. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he hung out. He hung out with an old girl. Makes sense to me.
Yep, we got Suru. We got Suru in the chat. I do not want to try to pronounce their name because I probably butcher it, so I'll abbreviate it. Suru is saying might be an old flame. So there you have it. It's on the line, same line I think with you, Milton. But this was a really cool scene because it opens up and you see a really cool Star Wars new alien. It looks like a big mall, and there's like this woman just like sipping her drink on the beach. But it was so weird, like the way that a Star Wars beach is. It's like a bunch of like steps, and they have like the chairs, and everybody's just like staring at the ocean. It was just such a weird scene because all these guys are just running around, and the shore trooper's like, "Hey, get back here!" Scare shore trooper, whatever. But yeah, I mean that was interesting. Now, what was your reaction? I want to hear it from you guys. What was your reaction to everything going on with the K2 droid, the KX droid?
So to me, and I did not like the scene at all. I was actually kind of annoyed with it just because me, it didn't make any sense, but then it kind of did because I did not remember like the ISB stating like sentences will be like harsher now. But when I had to remember that, I was like, first of all, he wasn't even doing anything. I was like, why are they stopping him?
Yeah.
But then in my head, I think of real life. It's like, well, like being pulled over by like some shitty of a cop, or like being profiled just because you look a certain way, you may act a certain way. Because he even said like, "Why are you breathing heavy?" or "Why are you running?" He's like,
"Yeah, why are you looking around? Why are you looking around like this?" He's like, "I'm not. I'm just going to the store."
And I'm gonna throw a little real life in here. As a black man in America, when I get pulled over, I have to be careful with how I respond or even how I present myself. So in this nature, I'm thinking of like Cassie. I'm thinking, well, listen, he's trying to like not respond a certain way, and he's trying to be civil, but he's still not getting the response that he needs to get. And I'm thinking to myself, I've seen that before in real life. I've experienced that before myself, and clearly, ramifications in this particular instance with Cassian was that he got accused of a crime he didn't commit. Now he's got 6 years in the can potentially. So it's like, it sucks. I was upset with the scene, but it made sense. What they're trying to do. Hopefully this will get resolved in the next episode.
This is like the most exciting thing we've seen, I feel like, and how this episode ended. I mean, it doesn't end on this note in the jail, but it ends with Cyril. But still, at least for Andor, I've never been like more engaged with what happens next in the next episode because he's in prison. Like, what the heck is going to happen? He's got all that money still, hidden above that shower in that apartment, wherever it is. What the heck is going to happen? Maybe this is where he, like, I think Ben or somebody put this out there, like maybe he finds one of Saul's people in prison and he gets involved with them or something.
Right.
Yeah, you see, like, that's kind of my thinking. Like, my whole thinking as well on the scene, like you both mentioned, he wasn't doing anything and they just, like, kind of arrested him for no reason. But, like, for me, honestly, like, that scene had really, with Star Wars having so many, like, World War II vibes, like, that's, like, what you'd imagine, like Jewish people maybe getting rounded up back then. Like that sort of thing. It's like, just getting arrested for no reason. Like, it had really, like, World War II era vibes to it, in my opinion. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Milton, nowadays, like, with a lot of the real-world stuff going on with people and different authorities, like, so like that had a lot of real world ramifications overall. And then so like you have those, and then the whole, like, him getting taken to jail, like, he has to get out of jail. I hope he doesn't sit in jail for the next four episodes and then he gets out in the fifth. Like, he's gonna get out, but it's just a matter of how he gets out. And it's like, it's got to be, something like I said, it's got to either be, he's in there with one of Saul's people, or maybe like Luthen and the rebel cell realizes they need Cassian still because he was a valuable asset. So maybe they go and recruit Saul. But I think Saul's going to be integral in getting him out.
Well, here's the thing, though. So he gave a false name, but I mean, can't they just do some simple thing of like checking his blood and getting a more accurate identification? And if that's the case, then they have the most wanted man in the galaxy that's responsible for the $80 million heist that screwed up the entire galaxy. So actually, this is really bad, because if somebody finds that out, oh man, like, we'll never get Rogue One. Like, he's got to get out of here somehow before that. And maybe what'll happen is Vel will find out that information.
Oh, yep.
Vel will go with Cinta, and they'll break him out, and they'll have a change of heart where they'll be like, oh, we aren't going to kill him. Or, they'll just find they'll find Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba who have the death sentence on 12 different systems out there, and they'll pop up for their little cameo.
Hey, there we go.
Right.
Because they were just in another comic book. It's like, whenever you go to a prison, you gotta have Ponda Baba in there. You gotta get those 12 different occurrences of the death sentence. So, all right, guys. I think we've basically talked as much as we could about this episode. Is there any final thoughts you might have, either of you? Then we'll just get into our scores out of 10.
I mean, yeah, I'll go first on this. I'll give my thoughts and my score.
Okay.
So, yeah, overall, I thought this episode was really, really good. I was very pleased with it. I was very engaged with this episode. The only weakness I can say is regarding that character that I will not name, because I don't want to know his name, nor do I want to remember his name. He's doing nothing. So, like, I think that particular character, he's a waste of space, in my opinion. But again, that's me not fully understanding, and this is why I'm being objective here. I'm not fully understanding where they're taking this character. So hopefully, once I'm seeing how his story develops, maybe at the end of this series, or excuse me, this season, I can go back and say, you know what? Now, after knowing the information, I can now make a full assessment of where this character stands, and maybe I might like what they're doing with him. But as of now, I don't care. But other than that, I love this episode. I love how we're seeing the ramifications of that heist, and how now the Empire is on full notice about the inklings and beginnings and formations of the rebellion. So if I had to rank this out of 10, this is my first 9 of the year. I would give this a 9 out of 10.
Holy crap.
Because this is, again, like, this is... And like I said, I had 2 other favorite episodes, but because I think the writing and pacing was so tight, the story development episode was so tight, except for that one particular character, not a perfect episode. I didn't need the action for this one because it needed to reset itself for the second half of the year. 9 out of 10.
All right. I'm going to pick up. I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10. So there we go. Everything, I'll echo what you said. I'll echo what I said in the beginning, because my mind hasn't changed. We've had great, healthy discussion on the channel tonight. Very positive. It's been nice being positive about this show and about Star Wars, because sometimes we get into it. That's all fun. We're all fans here, but we're all on the same page, I think. But yeah, everything from what I said a few minutes ago about this episode, even if there are characters that are in different organizations that never met with each other before, just this is one of the best Star Wars episodes that dealt with a galaxy spanning event that we've ever seen. Just the way it's integrated into the lives of just the lower middle class people of Coruscant, to the higher echelons of the Empire, to the people of the early rebellion. Everything, you got this wave of impact that is spread throughout the galaxy, and we're seeing how all these people are responding in their own ways. We're seeing the spy craft coming from the spies themselves, but also from the political aspect with Mon Mothma and how she's making deals, very much like House of Cards and The Wire and all these other shows. So everything comes together. The acting, the performances were great. As I said, Marva Fiona was fantastic in this role. Andor having really some great development, really getting a little bit of that bright side to his character that we'll see eventually transpire in Rogue One, getting everything from the insides of the Empire and the backstabbing that they brought from the Sith. All that, 9 out of 10. Damn good episode. Ben, what's your final thoughts and score out of 10?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can pretty much say it's similar to both of you. I think the episode was really, really well done. For me, it was the best episode of the series by far. Between the characters, the implications for all of the characters, really, everyone ranging from Cassian to Mon Mothma to Luthen to Eero, or the Imperial officer, the girl name, her story, all of these different characters. I mean, heck, even Cassian's stepmom, like all of these different characters were, they had good character moments in the show, in the episode, and I think it just made this episode feel the best. And like I guess the editing, as I mentioned to start the show, the editing for this episode was on point and done in such a good way, where it's like, all right, we don't have to worry about, like sitting on a scene too long. Like the episode just was snappy, it moved. There were a lot of really good things in it. Like I said, I really liked the music at the end on the beach place, because it felt like Miami or Costa Rica or somewhere like that, like a real tropical vibe to it. I thought that was done really well. And then just seeing our first stormtroopers, that was great. Mm-hmm. And then of course, like your little Easter eggs, like your Emperor Hents, your Yularians, like stuff like that. Just makes the episode for me a 9 out of 10.
There you go. 9s across the board. Suru in the chat has given it an 8 out of 10. We are very excited for the next episode of Andor. So we just have a couple more quick stories, just fly-bying these stories here. We have an update on Jedi Survivor. We got this from the Grub Snacks man himself, Jeff Grubb. Very prominent very prominent gaming journalist out there giving us the scoops. He's also kind of caught on. I'm like, we haven't heard about Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor. Is it coming out still? And he's got information saying, yes, the promotion will start in December. The game is still coming out in March, so we can expect the full-blown gameplay trailer, I would assume, coming out on the Game Awards, hosted by Jeff Keighley, as we get it every December. That comes out with a bevy of new game reveals, and Jedi Survivor will most likely be one of those. And then we're going to have a very small kind of promotional period for only a couple months to build up the hype for that game. Once again, that got revealed officially back at Celebration in April. We also have a new initiative for some collectors out there if they're interested over the next several weeks. Star Wars is having something called Bring Home the Galaxy. So every Tuesday, we're going to get some more product reveals. This one's pretty cool. We have a Black Series helmet for the first week that got revealed for the Clone Trooper, specifically Phase 2 Clone Trooper helmet. It changes your voice. Oh man, I'm like really tempted to buy this thing, especially with the voice changing. It's the plain one, but I know if I would ever get it, I would do a custom job with the blue paint to make it the good old 501st helmet. Because I was looking at one of these at one of the booths that they had in Comic-Con a couple weeks ago. It had one, and it was probably double the price of this. So a little elbow grease and a little bit good old customization. It might be worth getting for a bargain one day. The other thing we want to talk about, or at least mention, is there has been a change of leadership over at Lucasfilm. So Michelle Wejron, she has stepped down. She's still going to be working for Lucasfilm as a producer, so you're still going to see her name attached to many Star Wars projects. But she spent, a lot of time with, I think it was The Force Awakens. Yes, The Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker,
yep. Yeah, so she was very much a big name with guiding guiding the ship. I mean, we don't have any insider information on why the switch up happens. Sometimes people's personal lives get in the way. Sometimes people are just want to move somewhere else. So I don't know how much change this is going to have, but for those that are interested, yes, she's still going to be working there, but no longer going to be was a senior vice president, I believe.
Well,
Yep, of live action development. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say the interesting thing with her, yeah, so she was the senior vice president of live action development. So basically, when they first introduced her, like if you look up the article from 2019 or so, a couple of years ago now, if you look up that article, like the way they introduced her was, she was supposed to be like kind of the guiding hand over all of these live action projects. Like, it was they were kind of doing like the whole Kevin Feige vibes. Like she was supposed to be like the guiding live action person for Star Wars. And it just makes you wonder what happened there. Because, I mean, her main producing credit is The Rise of Skywalker. Like that was her main one. And it just makes you wonder, like what happened there. Again, as you mentioned, we don't know what happened. Like, or it could be, she's young. I think she's only in her mid 30s or upper 30s, and maybe she got into that role. And I'm sure many people have. You go get a promotion, and then you're like, oh man, this is way too much. Like my experience level is not like suited for this. And there's a chance maybe it was just potentially too much. Like you said, it's not like she's leaving the company. It's just she's stepping down from that role. So I feel like it has something to do with that. But also, I'm interested to see who takes that place, if anybody takes that place. And I think, like, I mean, this is just pure speculation at this point, but I think there's also side ramifications from, remember, a year or two ago when Dave Filoni had that promotion, he has more creative control, that sort of stuff. It makes me wonder if, like, with him moving up to more of a like senior type role, if that had something to do with this, where like now he has more control over his portion of like the Star Wars galaxy versus like say Michelle Rezwan like being like the live action like person guiding it. So just it's definitely interesting to see, and I just I'm interested to see if they actually fill that role or not.
Yeah, we'll just have to keep it on. It's funny because sometimes, like, when new roles get announced, people don't find out until like a couple months later. Like their names will appear in an article and it'll have like a title that they haven't had before, and then people look it up and be like, "Hey, they've had that title for like 3 or 4 months now. Just nobody knew about it." I think that's exactly what happened with Dave Filoni. They're like, "Oh yeah, Dave has had that role for like 6 months. We just never told anybody about it." It's like, "Oh, okay." So I feel like it could be one of those situations where they already have somebody in that role. It's just like there's no fanfare for it. They just one day it just comes out and we're like, "Oh, that's cool." Like it's not any effect on any of us. Like. With direction. But as for next week, it's going to be a big week. Just like it was last week for us. We don't really have a plan of action per se. We're going to play it by ear because we're getting not only Andor, but we're getting 6 episodes of a brand new Star Wars series next week. So we are at least hopefully going to get at least maybe like a first impressions on Tales of the Jedi. They're releasing all 6 episodes the same day of Andor. From what I hear, those people have watched it already. I think the total runtime of all 6 is like 80 minutes. So, just under an hour and a half. But still, that's more time we need to invest with watching these things. So our plan of action, I'll say, is definitely we'll talk about Andor next week for sure, like we did in good detail this week with this. And maybe, at least if some of us has watched some of the episodes, we'll at least try to give our non-spoiler like first impressions or something. But we will know for sure this time next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, hey, my first impressions already without seeing it is I'm definitely excited. I'm really excited for that show because like getting to see I think you're kind of with me on this too, Milton. I think the most exciting part about Tales of the Jedi coming up is the Dooku and Qui-Gon stuff. Like that's what I'm 1000% like. Of course, we love Ahsoka and everything, but I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen I've seen a lot of Ahsoka over the years. So like I'm mostly really excited for the Count Dooku and Qui-Gon stuff.
Right.
It's our first glimpse into like the furthest back storytelling in Star Wars. I'm most intrigued as the canon hound on the podcast about how are they going to go around the Dooku Jedi Lost audio drama that Kevin Scott wrote? Because I recently revisited that in preparation for trying to figure out the finer details of how they're going to navigate, if they're going to retcon, if it's going to be like Bad Batch episode 1 with Kanan Jarrus, and it's like, oh, I can see it now. The internet is going to be aflame on Wednesday if there's anything there. So you guys can look forward to our at least mentioning. I already gave my first impressions. That's right, because I've seen it at Star Wars Celebration in April. I've seen the first episode at least, the one where Ahsoka is a baby. So there you go. But we'll give more thoughts on that next week. For everything else on the channel, I have 2 videos now uploaded about New York Comic Con of a cosplay video. I have a vlog type video of just random places I've been and seen and things outside of the convention I did. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. As far as this week, just can see my comic book reviews. I have Darth Vader review, Dr. Aphra's coming out next Wednesday, so I'll be talking about that. But other than that, that's probably all I'm going to be having on the channel in the next week or so. I want to send a shout out to everybody in the chat. We had Naomi, we had Suru, who is a brand new viewer. Thanks, appreciate it. We also had Aaron Daly, our loyal follower there. So everybody can also join the chat as those did every week. 9 o'clock, especially it's Andor season, so we're going to be chatting in depth to this detail every single week. And you could listen to us if you're driving around, at the gym, whatever you prefer to do. Anywhere that podcast can be found, just search Outer Rim Transmission, and do give us a review, especially if it's on Spotify. Definitely could use that, and share us around. All right, so where can everybody find you guys, Ben and Milton?
You can find me on Twitter at MiltonWeber7 or Instagram at Milton7Weber. So this weekend, just hanging out with family and just getting ready to watch some football this Sunday.
Man, it's a good time if you're a Phillies fan, that's for sure.
Not a Phillies fan. I don't really do Philly baseball, I'll be honest with you. I do like the Yankees, so I do try to watch some of their playoff games. But look, my Eagles are undefeated. That's all I care about right now.
See, that's how much of a noob I am. I meant to say like a Philadelphia fan, but then I realized as I said Phillies, like you literally took it too literally as like the baseball team only. I know a lot of the Philadelphia teams are doing well, is what I meant to say.
That's all good. I mean, like I'll watch them when it's on, but not really like a baseball head like that.
Yeah, it takes too much. It takes too much time to watch baseball. All right, who's got time for that? And now I'm getting.
I barely watch TV.
And now,
I barely watch TV anymore. So it's like, yeah.
And now we're gonna get flamed in the comments. All the baseball fans are gonna disown me.
All right. I'll take that one. Baseball. Let's just be real. It's boring and it's nowhere near football. So yeah. I mean, it's well deserved.
Playoff baseball.
Playoff baseball. Yeah. Oh yeah, it for sure is like I mean last week in the Guardians, they had some exciting walk-off games with our young player and stuff. So there's definitely good moments like that. But for me, you can find me at Real Ben Maynard on Twitter and Instagram, talking, complaining about the Browns stinking and hoping they pull off a win. I don't know if they will, but we'll see. And then we'll see. Like you said, Milton, the Eagles keep going undefeated. I mean, I think I don't like to look ahead on schedules, but I really like the look of their schedule this year. So we'll see how they keep pushing. And then, of course, like on Instagram, you can find us posting our fitness and our workout stuff. Like for me, I'm getting back to it this coming week. Getting back on the diet, getting back on the hard workout grind, just because, like I mentioned to start the podcast, I've been sick this week, so starting to feel better, and it's back to all the workout grind starting this weekend, and of course on Monday.
There you go. You gotta train like a Jedi, man. You gotta train like a Jedi. So there you go. So make sure, of course, everybody, you follow the channel, youtube.com/Starrapter. Subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Starrapter. So for Milton, for Ben, for me, Chris, that's going to do it for us here for Outer Rim Transmissions was episode number 79. Thanks everybody for watching. May the force be with you always, and transmission.